This thief sat there and sold my car while calling me too poor to fight back. Let me tell you what disrespect really looks like.
Sit down. Your performance ends now. The evidence is about to speak for itself.
Evidence? Save it. You're a pathetic liar, and everyone here knows it.
The moment the courtroom doors swung open, you could taste the lie in the air. Chad Miller, 29, didn't walk to the defendant's table, he swaggered. Dressed in a too-tight designer t-shirt and flashing a smirk that had never known consequence. He looked at the plaintiff like she was something he'd scraped off his shoe. He leaned over to his buddy in the gallery, laughing. Watch this. 10 minutes, and I'm out of here. He had no idea that the small silver USB drive the judge was quietly turning over in her hand contained a digital recording so explosive. It wouldn't just end his case, it would end his entire life as he knew it. This is the story of a bully who finally picked on someone who hit record. What happens next isn't just justice. It's a public dismantling. If you love watching arrogant men crumble when their own words are used against them, you need to see this. Subscribe now. Across the aisle, Maya Rodriguez, 24, looked like she was holding herself together by a thread. Her hands were clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. A single mother and a full-time nursing student, her eyes were red-rimmed from months of sleepless nights and quiet panic. Her case was simple. Chad Miller, her ex-boyfriend, had refused to return her car after their breakup, then sold it out from under her. The car was a beat-up sedan, worth maybe $4,000, but to Maya, it was everything. It was the vehicle that got her to class, to her son's daycare, to her night shifts at the clinic. Without it, her carefully balanced world was collapsing. She'd borrowed money for legal fees from her abuela, money that was meant for medication. She wasn't just here for a car. She was here for survival. The judge, a woman with eyes that missed nothing, called the court to order. Her voice was calm, but it carried a weight that instantly shrunk Chad's smirk. Mr. Miller, you're being sued for the wrongful conversion and sale of property, a 2012 Honda Civic belonging to Ms. Rodriguez. How do you plead? Chad shrugged, the picture of relaxed insolence. Not guilty, Your Honor. That car was a gift. We were together. I put gas in it. I fixed the alternator. When we broke up, she said I could just keep it. Now she's having buyer's remorse because she's broke. It's my car. I sold it. End of story. The judge turned to Maya. Ms. Rodriguez, your response. Maya's voice was soft but clear, trembling with emotion. It was never a gift, Your Honor. We dated for 5 months. He was having car trouble, so I let him borrow it. Just borrow. I have the title in my name. I have the registration, the insurance documents. When I ended the relationship, I asked for my car back. He refused. He blocked my number. Then I saw on his friend's social media that he'd sold it for cash. I have the text messages where he admits he still has it, and I have a recording. Chad barked a laugh, loud and derisive. A recording? Of what? You crying? Big deal. The judge's gaze snapped to him. You will control yourself, Mr. Miller, or I will have you removed. Ms. Rodriguez, you recorded a conversation with Mr. Miller? Maya nodded, pulling an old smartphone from her bag. Yes, Your Honor. After he blocked me, I called him from my friend's phone. I didn't tell him it was me at first. I just wanted to hear him admit it. I was desperate. She placed the phone on the clerk's desk. It's all on here. The whole conversation. Chad's confidence didn't waver. It inflated. He crossed his arms, leaning back. This is a joke. She's probably edited it. You can do anything with audio. And even if it's real, so what? We were dating. People say stuff. It doesn't prove anything about who owned the car. The judge picked up the silver USB drive the clerk had handed her, the file transferred from Maya's phone. She held it up. Mr. Miller, you're very confident this recording won't hurt you. You're sure of your position? Dead sure, Chad sneered, directing his comment more to the cameras than the judge. She's a dramatic girl. She's making a scene for attention and money. The car was mine, period. The judge inserted the drive into her laptop. Let's test that theory. We'll play the recording for the court. But before we do, Mr. Miller, I'm going to ask you one more time. Is there anything you'd like to clarify about your testimony? Any detail you may have misremembered? It was a lifeline. A chance to walk back the arrogance, to show a shred of humanity. Chad Miller didn't just ignore it. He lit it on fire. Nope, I remember just fine. She gave me the car. I sold it. Play the little tape. Let's get this over with. I've got plans. The judge gave him a long, slow look. It wasn't anger. It was something colder, anticipation. Very well. Let's all hear what you had to say. She clicked play. The courtroom speakers crackled to life. The sound was clear. Maya's voice, disguised slightly, nervous. Hey Chad, it's Jessica. From the party? You still selling that Honda? Chad's voice, loud, bragging, unmistakable. Jess. Yeah, the Civic, it's gone, baby. Sold it last week to some sucker for $3,500 cash. Why? You looking for wheels? Maya, Jessica. Oh, that was quick. Was it even yours to sell? Chad's laugh, crude and loud, filled the room. Who cares? My crazy ex thinks it's hers. Has the title and everything. But what's she gonna do, sue me? I've got the cash. She's got a kid and no money for a lawyer. It's the perfect crime, sweetheart. Girl was dumb enough to loan it to me. Now she's dumb enough to think she can get it back. The recording stopped. The silence was absolute. Chad's smirk was frozen, then melting like wax under a flame. His eyes darted from the judge to the camera to Maya. The raw, boastful confession hung in the air, a monument to his own hubris. The judge steepled her fingers. Mr. Miller, you were saying something about a gift? Asterisk for a moment. Chad Miller looked like a cartoon character who'd just run off a cliff, still moving his legs in the air, but realizing the ground was gone. His mouth opened and closed, but the slick-talking, arrogant guy from 30 seconds ago had been surgically removed by his own voice on those speakers. The courtroom was so quiet you could hear the hum of the overhead lights. That's out of context. He finally blurted out, the words sounding weak and hollow even to him. I was showing off for a girl. You know how it is. I was talking big to impress her. It doesn't mean anything. The judge didn't even blink. Showing off, Mr. Miller? You called the sale of someone else's property the perfect crime. You specifically stated Ms. Rodriguez had the title, that she was too poor to fight you. That's not bragging. That's a confession. Chad's lawyer, who had been sitting quietly with a growing look of dread, stood up slowly. Your Honor, if I may. This recording, while ill-advised, was obtained under potentially deceptive circumstances. My client's privacy. Sit down, counsel. The judge cut in, her voice like a door slamming. The only privacy issue here is Ms. Rodriguez's property being stolen and sold. Mr. Miller was not in a private place with an expectation of confidentiality. He was on a phone call, boasting about committing a crime. The only deception was him believing he was talking to an admirer instead of the woman he was defrauding. The recording is admitted. Now, Mr. Miller, let's move from your performance for Jessica to the facts. You sold Ms. Rodriguez's car. Where is the $3,500? Asterisk. Chad shifted in his seat, the cocky posture replaced by a defensive hunch. It's gone. Expenses. I had bills. What bills? Just life, rent, stuff. Produce your bank statements for the last 60 days. Show me the deposit of $3,500 in cash, and then show me these bills that exactly consume that sum. I don't have them with me, Chad mumbled, looking at the table. Of course you don't, the judge said, a note of icy satisfaction in her tone. She turned back to Maya. Ms. Rodriguez, you have the title and registration in your name. Is there a loan on the vehicle? No, Your Honor, Maya said, strength slowly returning to her voice. I paid for it with my student loan refund 2 years ago. It's my only asset. She placed the clean official title on the clerk's desk. It was undeniable. The judge examined it and nodded. Mr. Miller, you have just admitted on a recording, which you've confirmed is your voice, to knowingly selling property you did not own. You've offered no proof of any gift, no proof of shared ownership, and no valid defense. This isn't a civil dispute. This is theft. But we're not done. Chad's head jerked up. What do you mean we're not done? She got her recording. You heard it, fine. No, not fine, the judge replied, opening a new file on her bench. You see, Mr. Miller, while my show deals with civil matters, evidence of a crime is evidence of a crime. And your little perfect crime monologue was so strikingly confident, it made me wonder. This level of arrogance doesn't usually come from a first-time offender. It comes from practice. Asterisk, she pulled out a single sheet of paper. I had my producers do a little digging. Just a public record search. Your name came up, Mr. Miller, or rather, the cases against you did. A small claims judgment last year from a former roommate for unpaid rent and stolen electronics. Dismissed after you moved and couldn't be served. A harassment complaint from a coworker at a gym where you were briefly employed. And most interestingly, a police report filed 6 months ago by another former, let's say, romantic interest. A woman who reported you borrowed her laptop and then pawned it. She withdrew the report after you promised to pay her back. She never got a dime, did she? Chad had gone pale. Those are all lies. Ex-girlfriends trying to get back at me. It's a pattern of harassment. The pattern I see, the judge said, her voice dropping into a dangerous, quiet register, is you targeting women you perceive as vulnerable, using relationships as access, and converting their property to cash the moment you feel you can get away with it. You're not a boyfriend, Mr. Miller. You're a predator with a dating profile. And today, you picked the wrong woman because she was smart enough to hit record. She looked at Maya. Ms. Rodriguez, the value of the car is established at $3,500. You are awarded that sum immediately. Additionally, for the intentional infliction of emotional distress, for the loss of use of your vehicle which impacted your education and employment, and for the sheer audacity of this fraud, I am awarding you $5,000 in punitive damages. Total judgment, $8,500 payable today. Chad shot up from his chair. Today? I don't have that. This is insane. Then you shouldn't have stolen and sold her car, the judge said flatly. You will empty your pockets. You will have your friend in the gallery empty his. You will authorize a direct transfer from whatever bank account you have. Every dollar you have on you or can access right now goes to Ms. Rodriguez. The balance will be paid through wage garnishment. But the financial judgment is the least of your concerns now. She held up the police report from the previous incident. This recording and today's testimony constitute probable cause for felony grand theft. I am duty-bound to refer this matter and the evidence of your prior pattern to the District Attorney's Office for Criminal Prosecution. A bailiff will be escorting you from this courtroom to meet with detectives. Your perfect crime, Mr. Miller, just earned you a criminal record. The gavel fell. Chad Miller stood there, his plans, his smirk, his entire facade utterly vaporized. He wasn't a guy with plans anymore. He was a defendant, about to be read his rights. The cameras caught the exact moment his eyes found Maya's. She wasn't crying anymore. She was looking right back at him, calm and steady. In that silent exchange was the whole story. He thought she was weak. She was just gathering evidence. The gavel's echo was still hanging in the air when the reality of the judge's words physically hit Chad Miller. It wasn't just the money. It was the word felony. It was detectives. His bravado didn't just crack. It imploded. You can't do that, he shouted, his voice cracking with a mix of panic and fury. This is a TV show. This is small claims. You can't just hand me over to the cops. The judge didn't even look up as she signed the referral order. I can, and I just did, Mr. Miller. This TV show operates in a real courtroom. And you committed a real crime on a recorded line, bailiff. The uniformed court officer stepped forward, his presence suddenly making the room feel 10 degrees colder. Chad's friend in the front row, the one he'd joked with earlier, was already edging toward the exit, his face a mask of, I don't know this guy. The cameras, which Chad had earlier played to, now felt like searchlights pinning him to the spot. Empty your pockets, please, sir, the bailiff said, his tone leaving no room for debate. With trembling hands, Chad pulled out a wallet. It was flashy designer, but mostly empty. He slapped a few crumpled bills on the clerk's desk, maybe $40. A debit card. That's it, he muttered. The watch, the judge said. Not as a question, but an instruction. Chad's hand instinctively went to his wrist, covering the chunky silver smartwatch. This was a gift. From another crazy ex? The judge shot back. Place it with the rest. It will be appraised and applied to the judgment. The humiliation was visceral, public, and being broadcast live. The expensive prop of his lifestyle was being confiscated to pay back the woman he'd called dumb. As the bailiff bagged the watch, the judge turned to Maya, her stern expression softened just a fraction. Ms. Rodriguez, the court clerk, will process the immediate payment from his assets. For the remaining balance, you will receive an income withholding order. It may take time, but you will be made whole. More importantly, you have stopped this man from doing this to someone else. That matters. Maya simply nodded, tears welling up again, but this time they were tears of overwhelming relief. She managed to whisper, "Thank you, Your Honor." But the drama wasn't confined to the bench. As Chad was being let out, not in handcuffs yet, but with a firm grip on his arm, he turned his head back toward Maya. The fear in his eyes had curdled into something ugly and desperate. "You think you won?" He hissed, loud enough for the microphones to pick up. "You're a snitch. You ruined my life over a piece of junk car. You'll regret this. I promise you." It was a threat. Clear, quiet, and venomous. The bailiff tightened his grip and pulled him toward the doors, but the words lingered, a toxic cloud in the otherwise victorious room. Maya's face, which had just found peace, tightened with a fresh wave of fear. She had her judgment, but now she had an enemy. The judge saw it. She leaned into her microphone. Let the record show the defendant, Chad Miller, made a direct threat against the plaintiff, Maya Rodriguez, upon exiting the courtroom. Bailiff, ensure that is noted in the criminal referral. Threatening a victim post-judgment will be considered by the district attorney. The doors swung shut behind Chad. The main case was over, but a new, more dangerous chapter had just been whispered into existence. In the hallway, the production reality crashed into the legal one. Chad was not immediately taken by police. He was ushered into a small, windowless holding room, a standard procedure for the show when legal matters escalated. A producer calmly explained they were waiting for actual police detectives to arrive to take formal custody, a process that could take an hour. In that room, Chad was alone with a camera and his crumbling ego. Asterisk, the footage from that room, later released as a powerful epilogue, was more telling than anything in the courtroom. The defiant smirk was gone. He paced like a caged animal, running his hands through his hair. "It was just a car," he muttered to himself, then to the camera. "She's making it a federal case. They're gonna try to make me a felon for this. For a stupid Honda." He kicked a chair leg, then winced. The performance was gone. This was the raw, scared kid behind the bully facade, realizing that actions for the first time were about to have permanent, life-altering consequences. He called his mother, his voice shaking. "Mom, you gotta call Uncle Frank, the lawyer. I'm in serious trouble." "No, it's not a misunderstanding. They have a tape. I said some stuff." Back in the courtroom, Maya was surrounded by the show's staff, offering water and support. A legal consultant for the show sat with her, explaining the next steps for the wage garnishment and the pending criminal case. "You won't have to testify today," the consultant assured her. "The recording is your testimony, but the DA's office will contact you." Maya nodded, clutching her copy of the judgment. The piece of paper felt heavy with meaning. It was validation. It was justice, but the weight of Chad's threat still pressed on her as she gathered her things to leave. A court officer approached. "Ms. Rodriguez, for your safety, we're going to have you leave through a back exit. A car is waiting to take you to your train station." The show, experienced with volatile litigants, wasn't taking any chances. Maya's victory, it turned out, came with a security escort. Asterisk, the episode cut to its final commercial break with two starkly different images. Chad Miller, alone in a stark room, waiting for the police, his head in his hands. and Maya Rodriguez being guided safely out of the building. Clutching her legal paperwork, looking out the car window at the city, her city, that she now had to navigate with one burden lifted and a new, fearful one imposed. The battle in court was won. The war for peace of mind, however, had just entered a new, uncertain phase. The viewer was left with a clenched stomach and a pressing question. Was justice served if the victim now had to look over her shoulder? The satisfying snap of the gavel was now followed by the unsettling echo of a promise. You'll regret this. Asterisk, the fallout from Chad Miller's courtroom meltdown didn't wait for the episode to air. It went viral in real time. Audience members in the gallery were already posting clips on their phones before the bailiff had even finished escorting Chad out. The most shared moment wasn't the judgment, it was the raw, uncut shot of his face the exact second he heard his own voice on the speaker saying, "It's the perfect crime, sweetheart." That freeze frame, the smirk dying mid-transformation into dawning horror, became an instant meme. The hashtag perfect crime Chad started trending by lunchtime, but the internet's fascination was a double-edged sword. While the world laughed at Chad's arrogance, they also zeroed in on his final, venomous threat to Maya. You'll regret this. That clip was shared with a very different caption. He threatened her. After he lost. This isn't over. True crime forums and community watch groups on social media dug deeper. Using just the details mentioned in court, his first name, the city, the gym job, online sleuths unearthed Chad's full digital footprint in a matter of hours. Asterisk. They found his social media profiles filled with pictures of him posing with cars that weren't his. At parties he likely crashed, and gym selfies with misogynistic captions. More damningly, they found the profiles of the other women hinted at in court. The former roommate he'd allegedly stolen from commented on a news article, "He took my Xbox and my security deposit." The judge was right. He does this to anyone he thinks can't fight back. The coworker from the gym posted a lengthy thread detailing his aggressive, inappropriate behavior that management had brushed off. The woman who filed the police report over her laptop came forward publicly in a TikTok video, holding the pawn ticket she'd found in her own apartment. "He never paid me back. He just ghosted me. Watching this today, I feel so seen, and so angry I didn't press charges." The narrative shifted from a single case of car theft to the unmasking of a serial opportunist, an emotional and financial vampire who moved from victim to victim. The public outrage was no longer just about justice for Maya. It was about accountability for every person he'd ever stepped on. This digital tsunami reached the district attorney's office before their official paperwork from the show did. The public pressure was immense. By the next morning, they had issued a formal statement. "We are in receipt of the referral from the televised court proceeding and are actively investigating the allegations of grand theft. We are also reviewing the defendant's statement, construed as a threat against the victim, for potential charges of witness intimidation." For Chad, released on his own recognizance after being processed by detectives, the real world had become a prison. He couldn't go home. His apartment building manager had seen the news, and his eviction notice was being drafted, citing the disturbance and the police presence. He couldn't go online. Every notification was a torrent of hatred, a meme of his own downfall, or a message from another potential victim he'd forgotten about, now emboldened to speak up. His phone rang incessantly, not from friends, but from local news reporters. The perfect crime had backfired into a perfect storm of public shaming. Meanwhile, the wheel of justice for Maya began to turn in more tangible ways. The show's producers, leveraging the viral attention, connected her with a nonprofit legal aid group specializing in victims' rights. They helped her file for a temporary restraining order based on Chad's on-camera threat, which was granted immediately. The $8,500 judgment was one thing, but the restraining order was a shield. It meant Chad could be arrested for simply coming within 100 yards of her son, or her school. The money started trickling in too. The $40 from his pocket and the proceeds from the auction of his watch were a start. But more surprisingly, An online fundraiser set up by a viewer who was moved by her story raised over $10,000 in 2 days. The description read, "To replace what was stolen and to buy security for her and her son." Maya was stunned. She posted a simple, tearful thank you video from her kitchen, her young son playing in the background. "I just wanted my car back," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I never expected this. Thank you for helping me feel safe." But safety felt fragile. The threat had been real. Every knock at the door, every unfamiliar car that slowed near her bus stop, sent a jolt of fear through her. The legal victory was a document. The fear was a feeling. They existed in her life, side by side. She started looking over her shoulder. She changed her routines. The victory was sweet, but it was not simple. Chad, isolated and desperate, made his next move from a motel room paid for with the last of his pawn phone money. He called a local crisis PR firm, the kind that promises to fix reputations. In a recorded consultation they later leaked to a podcast, he could be heard not expressing remorse but frustration. "I need to spin this," he said. "The girl is making me out to be a monster. I just made a mistake. How do I get the public back on my side?" The consultant, to his credit, replied, "Mr. Miller, the public doesn't like you. The only path forward is a genuine, abject public apology to Ms. Rodriguez and a commitment to repay everyone you've wronged." And even then, Chad hung up. An apology was not in his playbook. He was still trying to win the game, even from checkmate. The stage was now set for the final act. Two paths were diverging. Maya, armed with community support and legal protection, was trying to rebuild a life that now included the shadow of fear. Chad, cornered by his own actions and facing the walls of reality closing in, was looking for any exit that didn't involve admitting he was wrong. The courtroom had been the arena. Now, the aftermath was the battlefield, fought in the press, online, and in the quiet, anxious moments of daily life. The gavel had fallen, but the echoes were still shaping lives. The climax wasn't in a courtroom. It was on a rainy Thursday afternoon, 3 weeks after the verdict, in the parking lot of a suburban strip mall. Chad Miller, looking gaunt and unshaven in a hoodie, thought he was being clever. He had convinced himself the restraining order was just a piece of paper, and his new mission was to get Maya to talk sense. He saw it as a negotiation, not a violation. He'd tracked her routine, her new used car bought with the donated funds, the daycare she used, the clinic where she did her nursing practicum. He waited behind a dumpster near her clinic's staff parking lot, rehearsing his lines. He would appeal to her empathy. He would explain how his life was ruined. He would make her see that dropping the criminal charges was the right thing to do. What Chad didn't account for was the security protocol the clinic had implemented for Maya after the shows. Producers alerted them to the high-profile threat. They'd assigned a security guard to walk staff to their cars after dark shifts. He also didn't account for the silent panic button on the keychain the legal aid group had given Maya. Sent directly to the local police precinct, Maya saw him the moment she stepped out of the back door, her heart launching into her throat. He stepped out from the shadows, holding up his hands in what he thought was a peaceful gesture. "Maya, please, just 5 minutes." She didn't scream. She didn't run. She pressed the button on her keychain and took a slow step back towards the clinic door. "You need to leave, Chad. You're violating the order. Right now. Just listen." He pleaded, his voice desperate, taking a step forward. "They're charging me with a felony. A felony for a stupid car. You can tell them to stop. You can fix this." That's when the security guard, a large man named Ray, rounded the corner. "Step away from her, sir, now." Ray's hand was on his belt, his posture wide and authoritative. Chad, blinded by his own panic and self-pity, made the worst decision of his life. He didn't retreat. He took another aggressive step towards Maya, pointing a finger. "This is your fault. All you had to do was let it go." The next 60 seconds were a blur of flashing blue lights. 2 patrol cars, alerted by the panic button's precise GPS location, screeched into the parking lot. Chad, finally realizing the abyss he was standing over, tried to run. He slipped on the wet asphalt, scrambling to his feet, only to be met by 2 officers who tackled him to the ground. The body cam footage was stark and brutal. "You are under arrest for a violation of a domestic violence protective order, attempted intimidation of a victim, and stalking." The metallic click of the handcuffs was the final, definitive sound on his fantasy of control. Asterisk, this time, there was no release on recognizance. Chad Miller was remanded into custody. His bail was set high, and with no assets and a family that had publicly distanced themselves, he sat in a jail cell. The district attorney, armed with the new arrest for witness intimidation and the mountain of public evidence of his pattern, upgraded the charges. He was now looking at multiple felony counts: grand theft auto, fraudulent conversion, witness intimidation, and stalking. The plea deal that was eventually offered was harsh: plead guilty to the theft and intimidation charges, accept a sentence of 18 to 36 months in state prison, and formally renounce any contact with Maya Rodriguez for life. If he went to trial, they would parade every one of his past accusers onto the stand. He took the deal. Maya watched the news of his sentencing from her living room, her son asleep in her lap. There was no cheer, no celebration. Just a deep, shuddering exhale she felt like she'd been holding for months. The final threat had been neutralized by his own stupidity. The system, slow and creaky, had finally locked into place around him. The story didn't end with a prison sentence, though. It ended with a quiet kind of rebuilding. Maya used a portion of the donated funds to install a home security system. She used another part to pay off a chunk of her student loans. The wage garnishment from Chad's future prison job would be a tiny, symbolic trickle for years, but that wasn't the point anymore. The point was the lesson learned, and the lesson taught. She finished her nursing degree that semester, graduating with honors. The local news did a follow-up story, not about the case, but about her graduation. They filmed her in her new scrubs, working at the same clinic. She was composed, strong, a professional. She declined to talk about Chad Miller at all. "That chapter is closed," she said politely but firmly. "I'm focused on my son, my patients, and my life." Her silence was more powerful than any victory speech. She had refused to let his drama become her forever story. The viral video of Chad's downfall still circulates. It's used in law schools to discuss evidence, in women's self-defense seminars to talk about trusting their instincts and documenting everything, and of course on YouTube channels as the ultimate example of poetic justice. But the real human end of the story is Maya Rodriguez, a woman who walked into a courtroom trembling and walked out of a graduation ceremony with a future she built herself. She didn't just win a case. She reclaimed her narrative. Chad Miller became a permanent cautionary tale, a 2-minute clip of arrogance meeting its match. Maya Rodriguez became a person who moved on. And in the end, that's the most satisfying verdict of all. Not the one that punishes the guilty, but the one that allows the innocent to finally live in peace without having to look over their shoulder anymore. The gavel's echo fades. The life she built afterwards is what truly resonates.